Welcome to Around Town, featuring what's happening in the Concord area. I'm your host, Dick Pat, and it's a pleasure to welcome you back here on this supposedly spring day, but we're still playing with winter somewhat. But I'm very glad to have my special guest today, Colin Van Osteren, who is now a candidate for the Secretary of State position here in New Hampshire. But oddly enough, the voters don't get a chance to vote for him. It's going to come up to the legislature in December after they have the elections in November. But welcome back. Now, I thought you would try for governor again, but you decided yes, no, no.
No, to be honest, I thought about it.
I know you did, yeah.
Partly because I'm really worried about the state of our politics right now, nationally.
Oh.
I think it's a mess, and when I ran for governor in 2016, we came very, very close.
I know you did.
Lots of people helped, thousands of people around the state. So I felt some obligation to think about what I could do to kind of pay it forward. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that beyond just the partisan back and forth issues that you have in every election, there's I think some more fundamental, important, mainly nonpartisan issues about protecting our democracy and our free and fair elections. And that's what I worry about most, kind of the corporate money in politics and the gerrymandering, so they redraw the lines to choose who votes for who, and trying to make it more difficult for college students or others to register to vote. I think young people are our future, and I want to stand up for free and fair elections. And no one has run for this job in a very long time, but I thought it was, worth doing for the people of New Hampshire.
Has anybody ran against
So the
Gardner?
last serious contest was in 1984. Donna Sitek ran against him.
Really?
In 1984, and then he ran in 1976. There was a sitting Secretary of State then, and Bill ran against the Secretary of State back in 76. And it's the Constitution lays it out. It's an election of the members of the combined House and Senate, and on Organization Day they'll choose our next Secretary of State.
So the Senate gets to vote on this too?
They do, but their vote counts the same as every House member, so it's not a vote of the House and of the Senate separately. It's just there are 424 members, and they each count for one vote.
But I didn't remember the Senate sitting in there with us when we vote, though.
Well, it's the more recent contests have been like for state treasurer. So a couple years ago, we had a new state treasurer elected, and then you do have there are only a handful of senators compared to those of you in the House. There are 400 of you and only 24 of them. So one out of every dozen or so.
So this is the first time since 1984 that he's been challenged.
Yeah, and I think competition is healthy. In some ways, this job, part of it is to stand up for our democracy itself. And I think having an election for that and laying out policies and priorities, I don't question his motives or his character. I respect everyone who serves in public office, especially someone who's done it for so long. But I also think we have some different policies and priorities, and that's why we have elections, is to, give the people an opportunity to choose the right direction for our state.
Do you know how many states, Colin, that the Secretary of State is voted upon by the people?
It's the most common way that it happens. So I don't know the exact number, but most states do choose the Secretary of State by election on the ballot.
That's what I was wondering.
In Maine, they choose their Attorney General the way we choose our Secretary of State. So in Maine, the Attorney General there is a woman who was selected by the legislature.
Yeah.
So each state does this a little bit different. And, I used to serve on the Executive Council for 4 years.
I know you did.
I think I was on the show when I was your executive counselor here. When you look at New Hampshire state government, it's easy to look at one piece and say, that doesn't seem to make any sense. But when you look at it all together, it tends to work better than almost anywhere else.
Yeah, I guess.
And it's, I think what we usually do a good job of, not always, but usually, is remembering that government's supposed to be here for people, not powerful interests. Those of you in the legislature do it out of love for the community.
Yeah.
You certainly don't do it for the paycheck.
I know, and it's funny because they think because we're a legislator, oh, you must make awful big money, you know. I said, you're $100, and then they take taxes out of that. So we'll get a check for $75 if we're lucky.
Yeah.
In Concord, you get no mileage.
Right.
So
That's true.
yeah, no, we don't get. I think I got 75. I think I got $1.11 for mileage.
You might have been the least of anyone in the.
And they took
400.
taxes out. I get 75. Now write a check out for 75 cents. It's like okay, yeah.
Yeah, probably spent more on postage and
exactly.
envelopes
yeah.
and
When I
everything
saw
else.
that, I thought, oh wow, that's a big deal. But
Yeah.
I know because people think here at the election year, wow, they're making big money, and I said, yeah, sure, not legislators anyway.
I think most legislators do the job because they believe in public service.
Exactly, it's like a volunteer position.
Yeah. And I've been I've been spending a lot of time talking to legislators and hearing what issues that you see out of the Secretary of State's office. Much of what that office does isn't even about elections at all.
No.
They have the corporate division. If you want to register a nonprofit or a business, you have to register it with the state, get a trade name, get your articles of incorporation or your certificate of good standing, the corporate securities division, vital records, archives. And there are some places there where we could do a better job of modernizing some of that. So you can, if you don't live in Concord, that you can get some of that paperwork done online a little bit easier than you could today.
Where is most of his offices located? That office located? Is it over in the annex?
Some of it is, yeah. So there's a Secretary of State's office on the second floor of the State House, just a couple offices there.
Yeah.
Across the street is the corporate division,
Oh,
right in the annex there. But then Archives has its own facility down near Fruit Street.
Oh, yes. Down there, yeah.
All the old file boxes.
Yes, yes.
It's also where they bring in town clerks and city clerks to do trainings for the elections.
Oh, okay.
That's a group that I think we could do a better job of listening better to. In Concord, we didn't have to deal with it, but a couple weeks ago there was a blizzard on town meeting day.
Yeah.
Second year in a row. And a lot of folks who live in towns instead of cities, a lot of what I've heard is that, they think that a local election official, like a town clerk, a moderator, should be able to have some say in moving the election if it snows so bad that it's not safe for people to come out.
Oh, sure. Exactly.
And I've heard that from, it's Republicans, Democrats. It's not a partisan issue. It's just that sometimes I think New Hampshire works best when we have flexibility, when we have relationships and cooperate. And the Secretary of State's office has had a pretty rigid point of view that, it's up to them to change the date of a voting day, even for town elections. And I think it's an example of the sort of thing we could do differently.
So he sets the date for the voting far as all the elections in New Hampshire far as November or September or June filing or...
Some of them are established by law.
Yeah, by law.
Yeah, so Organization Day, for example, when the legislators get sworn in, that's always, I think it's the first Wednesday of December.
December, yeah, it is.
And the New Hampshire presidential primary must be at least 7 days before any similar contest anywhere else in the country.
Yeah.
So usually there's some discretion and some guidance from the state law.
I know, I can remember when the New Hampshire primary was in March.
It seems like it's creeped up
February.
over and over. Yeah, I remember it happening in January. At least it's gotten back in the right direction.
Yeah, I remember that.
Though what's important is that we're first. I mean, if it had, I believe strongly in the power of the primary, not because I think New Hampshire's a better place than anywhere else, but because it forces people running for president to have real interactions with real people.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can remember the number of times someone running for president sat across the seat from someone in a diner or a show like this without all the, fancy TV cameras and everything else from the national press, or had a town hall meeting.
Sure.
And I remember John McCain in New Hampshire at a town hall meeting when he was having a town hall meeting and someone criticized Barack Obama at the town hall meeting. They said he's just I forget if they said a Muslim or an Arab, but they were kind of using a either religious or racial term in a disrespectful way. And to his credit, John McCain said, no, he's a decent family man who just happens to have different policy ideas than I do. And that revealed, I thought, John McCain's character in a positive way. It shows he's willing to stand up even to someone who is kind of trying to egg him on.
Yeah.
And that you only get that in New Hampshire. Everywhere else in the country, it's all about, TV ads, and you go to an airport and have 1,000 people there, and it's nothing else.
I know. And they've already started coming to New Hampshire now.
That's true.
Kasich's been here, and so hasn't Ben O'Malley, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't take them too seriously. I don't know. They could be. I mean, I'm sure the Democrats are going to have somebody for president again.
Yeah.
I'm looking toward a Kennedy. I think it's time for a Kennedy to come back in. The boys, the kids now are up there.
Yeah.
Was it Patrick and was it Joseph?
Well, there's a congressman from just over the border.
Yeah, in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I think it's Joe Kennedy III, if I remember correctly.
That's the one. And then there's Patrick in Rhode Island. Isn't he a state senator or something?
I think he had been, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah. So, but that's my thought. Is I'm looking at seeing a Kennedy coming back in.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just I'm anxious to see what is going to happen.
Yeah.
With 20. Well, you might as well say this fall, because once we get done our elections in November, then it's off to the races, because in 2019 will be full of campaign appearances and everything else for those candidates.
This is the first place anyone's going to fill out a ballot saying who they think our next president should be.
Yeah, yeah.
Right here in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be. And, one of the main reason we have the primary here is because 102 years ago, in 1916, New Hampshire took that candidate selection process out of the convention halls, and it used to always be like a smoke-filled back room where someone would decide this.
Sure.
And they put it in the voting booth.
Yep.
And that is why we had the first primary here. And then because we've been generally independent-minded and kind of surprised people, we've, I believe, earned the right to continue to be first. It's not arbitrary. It's because it used to always be power brokers and folks in the back room as opposed to having it be chosen by the people.
I know. I thought maybe you might run again for executive council or something, or, I was watching to see what you were going to do after that after the election of 2016, but, I just said, gee, it's too bad. He's such a young guy, and I know he'd be a good leader somewhere there, but I wondered where you would come back.
Well, I work in the private sector. I work right now. I'm not running full-time for office, but I do believe in public service. I think part of that is because I moved around a lot when I was a kid. When I moved to New Hampshire, I was 22. It was the 18th house I ever lived in.
Oh, my goodness.
And I lived, everywhere, all across the country. My family bounced around a lot. Actually up in Canada for a year when I was in second grade in Ottawa.
Oh, wow.
But I never really had a home where I put down roots until here. And now I have two sons who were born at Concord Hospital. We live a mile from where they were born. I walk my son to Christa McAuliffe School every morning. And that's really special. For someone who didn't have that growing up, that's so important. And I feel like public service is one of the ways that I can try to make sure that New Hampshire is a great place for him and his friends. And I really enjoyed serving on the executive council. And in some ways, it's not like being a state senator. There are not party caucuses on the executive council. Most of the votes that you take are not partisan ones. They're usually not controversial. It's just kind of doing the good business of good government. And I enjoyed that work. I think it's important. And I think we could do a better job of focusing on some of those good government things rather than, pushing what I think has been a pretty controversial agenda around making it harder for people to vote or register to vote or that sort of thing.
So what kind of a budget, how many people work under the Secretary of State?
Well, it's relatively small. It's a couple dozen folks who work there.
That's it?
And, it's divided across the different divisions. I should say a few dozen, it's more than a couple dozen. But, there are folks who work in archives, keeping good records for the state, folks who work in the corporate division, if you think about it, it really is just being the secretary's office
Yeah.
for our state government.
Sure.
In the traditional use of the word secretary. When I was on the executive council for 4 years, we would have a representative from the Secretary of State's office who did a great job, and she would keep notes of the meeting. She would keep track of the official agenda.
Sure.
I worked with her to try to get that agenda online so that voters could see the exact same thing that councilors were going to vote on.
Yep.
Because I think transparency is important. You know, and most of those issues don't make the newspaper every day, and that's okay. No. You know, sometimes it's the things that make the newspaper that are the biggest mess.
Oh, I know it.
And it's more about just trying to do good work for good people.
So you're going to be really active this, I would say, probably for what, November, was it election day is November 7th or 8th? Was it the 8th this year, I think?
I don't remember which it is.
It's right around that date.
Yeah.
So from that point to the day they meet in December, you're going to be right out there, boy, making calls and
Sure.
making...
And one of the reasons I got started now is because, you know, you have 423 colleagues.
Yeah.
Trying to get a hold of 424 people in less than 30 days between Election Day and Organization Day with Thanksgiving in the middle of it,
Yep.
that's tough. And, you know, and I respect that our Secretary of State has been there for 42 years. It's not going to mean it's easy to bring change. So partly I'm starting having those conversations now, you know, especially with folks who are going to run again or with candidates who are thinking about running. I try to talk with them about some of the things I think we can do to protect fair elections in New Hampshire. I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm working on a project to try to make partisan gerrymandering a thing of the past. You know, there are a couple of states that have looked at doing an independent redistricting process where you have a couple of Republicans, a couple of Democrats, a couple of independents. Some level of them across party lines have to agree before you can adopt a new map.
Yep.
And you try to do it based on which communities make sense to put together.
Sure.
You know, I used to represent Durham, but not Lee. They go to the same high school. And yet I also represented Keene, you know, an hour and a half away from Durham. It just, things like that are just done for political reasons, and I think it stifles people's voices in their own government. So between now and the election, you know, we'll talk to representatives, talk to folks who are running, talk about how we could change that, talk to the political parties too. My hope is that between the Democratic Party, the Libertarian Party, and the Republican Party, maybe there'll be some movement towards having language in the party platforms about how we could get away from partisan gerrymandering and focus more on an independent way of doing it.
Interesting. Well, you can always be in the Concord Christmas Parade. That's November 17th. That gets you out there. People are coming around. We get a lot of people down.
That's true. How was the Easter egg hunt?
Oh, my goodness. We had close to 1,000 people over here.
Really?
Oh, yes. We had filled 4,200 eggs.
Yeah.
And we had, I don't know whether it was like, I shouldn't say this, like Halloween, because the State House had an egg hunt down there early. Then Kimball Jenkins had one. Then White Park had one, because the Grange sponsored both of them. Matt Finney, who was a third grade teacher at Broken Ground, wanted to do one badly up at White's Park, that's where they live up in that area. So he asked me if the Grange would be willing to sponsor it because it's the insurance up there to have to live there.
Okay.
And we said yes, we'd be glad to do it, cover it. He was going to take care of everything. So we did that part for him. And then the Grange, of course, did the one here on the Heights, because none of us ever knew that the city had dumped it 5, 6, 7 years ago until last year when I brought it back after being gone. And so last year we had about 200 kids there, and this year it was just like whoosh.
Wow.
So I think what they did was they may have gone around, and when they got done, well, let's go to the Heights and see what's over there, because there was so many cars parked on Pembroke Road and Newton Ave. I couldn't believe it. I went to a graveside service that morning for a few minutes up here at Selkirk, and I came back at 11:15, and it was just mobbed. It was just, I couldn't believe it. And so, yeah, we figured there was it was at least several hundred kids and adults there. 'Cause we made sure every kid had an adult with them.
Well, one of the great things about New Hampshire is that we often have stronger communities than a lot of other places.
Yeah,
I think that comes in a lot of ways. It comes through schools, it comes through community events.
yeah,
In smaller towns, often it's the town meeting.
sure.
In the cities, it's often more around neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But that is special. Not everywhere has that anymore.
No.
And I moved around a lot as a kid, and so I kind of have seen the different points of contrast. But, I've seen that. And I think we often do a good job in New Hampshire, not always, but often, of helping our young people understand that they live in a special place. One of my favorite days when I was in the State House was every time the fourth graders came through.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
They come
sure.
through, and often it'd be in the middle of a meeting of the governor and executive council, and you got a chance to stop, and you could ask where they were from, and ask them a couple questions, and tell them a little bit about the work that you were doing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
If you have to stop in the middle of a sometimes hot-tempered or controversial argument over a state contract, and then turn around and explain it to a group of 44 fourth graders,
Oh, yeah.
everyone takes a deep breath, and their
Sure.
temperatures go down.
Yeah.
You realize you have to say it in simple terms, and that forces you to think about it in a more straightforward way. And I don't think you see that, troops of fourth graders walking through the State House constantly in other parts of the country in the same way that you do here. It's a special thing, and I think, we each have a responsibility to try to make sure people stay connected, that our state serves people well, and that we don't lose track of the fact that, all of us are doing this for the people. That is why we get involved in public service.
I was surprised. I'd have to admit, I didn't realize that you lived in Concord.
Oh yeah, my wife and I live over by White Park.
Yeah, I remember
we
you
live
said
kind
that.
of on the Franklin Street side of White Park.
So did your kids, were they old, young enough to be able to go to the? Because I know we had an age limit on the egg hunt, but did they go to the White's Park one?
Not this year. We have in the past, but we have family in Franconia, New Hampshire, so we were up visiting my wife's family up there, up north.
Okay.
They like to do a Easter dinner and that sort of thing
Sure.
up there. So
Yeah.
this year the kids went skiing on Easter.
Crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is pretty much.
Well, I don't know. Like I said, I've been very disappointed with the way the legislature's been going this year.
Yeah,
It's just been, I don't know, because we had the change in speakers,
yeah,
but it's just been a lot of in-house dissension between on the Republican side, and it's just like I just feel like we haven't got nothing done.
that's not a
You
good
know,
feeling.
and I just don't. I mean, some of the stuff that they have, we'll table. Well, that's not good. Whenever it comes off the table, you might as well just dump it. But
Yeah,
it just doesn't seem like we really got a lot done. But I know the Democrats have worked really hard together, and we've had some of the Republicans join us. They've come over, crossed over to vote with us. So we have got a few things in, but like I've been very strong about getting the train back up here.
oh yeah,
I just feel that, and they look at it the wrong way. They think it's going to destroy the buses and all that. Why can't they all work together? And my feeling is that there's no buses that are handicapped accessible.
okay,
There is no coaches, a Concord coach, Peter Pan, I don't care what it is. They're not handicapped accessible.
yeah,
And the trains, at least handicapped people can get on them. There's no up steps to get up in there to ride. They're very comfortable, and they really work well with the disability people. And I myself, I'll take them any day. I love it. But of course, they've got upgraded tracks and all that stuff. That's the sad part. They've let them go. Pan Am has done nothing to upgrade those tracks. But I'm hoping that we can get them going and see that it does. People want it, they do.
yeah.
But you got your truckers, your buses. They're all afraid of the train coming back in.
Well, you remember when I had been an executive counselor, that was one of the issues that I fought hard for. We
Yeah.
did pretty big economic development study
Yeah.
that had been stalled, and we got it going, and it showed a lot of positive economic benefit.
Course.
Thousands of new jobs would be created, and home values would go up near the tracks. And in the work that I'm doing now, I'm trying to stay focused on issues around voting rights and modernization and
Sure.
local control, and not get too involved in the legislative issues. But I have a pretty open public record on that one. And having worked in Manchester for a long time, I can tell you that anything you could do to get some cars off the road during rush hour is probably not a bad thing.
Well, I think just sitting here talking with you and getting to have known you better the last few years is that I can see that you would do very well as our Secretary of State. I mean, you have done well as a governor, but I mean, if you've chosen to go for that position, I think you'd make a good one.
Well, I appreciate that. I think there are a lot of different ways to serve. And I love living in Concord. I love having kids in this community. And I hope to be able to, contribute in public service again in the future.
Well, I hope you can too. And if I'm lucky enough to be re-elected for my 5th term this year, then you can count on me to help you with your campaign, because I think you would be very good.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
You've got a good personality, and even though I have to laugh, I say sometimes that's the Grand High Society up in that Auburn Street area, but
I said the Franklin Street side, not the Auburn Street side. Let me be clear.
I always am at the Grand.
Though the kids did go up there on Halloween for.
Oh yeah, a lot of.
You can get the full size candy bars up there.
Oh yes, that and ice cream. Oh
Yeah.
yes, but anyway, we're coming to a close there, and thanks again for coming on, Colin. And as it gets closer this fall, you're more than welcome to come back on
Thank
again.
you. I appreciate it.
To kind of freshen up their minds, although my director has this on YouTube as well.
Okay.
And that's on there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So
Great.
you'll be able to see it on there as well as on CCTV. So
Well, look out for it.
yes, by all means.
Thank you.
So with that in mind, if you're interested in supporting Colin or asking him more questions, please give him a call. Or what's the best way to get you?
So probably on our website, which is freeandfairnewhampshire.com.
Okay, good. Well, thanks to my director, Ian Marks, and we hope you have a great day, and hopefully spring will finally arrive, and we'll see you all soon. I'm your host, Dick Patton. Have a great one.